Hi everyone, this is Richard Wilkinson, and I'm going to be talking about the paper I've written. I've titled "The Bible and Religious Freedom as a Foundation to the American Government." And this idea started off a while ago as I was doing some other research, and I wanted to see how religious freedom played into or affected the notion of civil freedom or liberty, especially as we have it in America. And to do this, I started looking at a number of authors. I looked at John Adams, Samuel Adams, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. I also looked at a lot of religious writers during the American Revolution. So John Leland, the Baptist preacher. I looked at Timothy Wright, Jedediah Smith, Thomas Hooker, who was a Puritan in the 1630s, and John Saltmarsh, who was also a Puritan around that time, some other Puritan writers. And so I looked at what they taught, especially John Leland, who was very influential during the American Revolution, knew a lot of the more famous founding fathers, corresponded with George Washington and some of the others, and what they talked about. And as I did this, I started changing my focus on my paper. And I focused it more on the freedom or the concepts that came from the freedom of being able to read the Bible. And so I went back and looked up what William Tyndale said, Thomas Cranmer said, and some other writers in the early Reformation, 1500s, and saw how they believed that everyone should be able to read the Bible and that everyone could understand the Bible, right? Pretty normal Protestant teaching. And that this idea, coupled with the idea of the priesthood of believers, and the idea that there should be no hierarchy in the church, which also transferred that there should be no hierarchy in the civil government, really started creating the idea of equality. And this idea is one that Vincent Broderick argues that the Bible helped to create and spur on the American Revolution. So my research focuses on these topics. I look first, or talk about first in my paper, the Bible and the ability to read the Bible. That comes with the Protestant Reformation and how that allowed people to start thinking about government, looking at what republicanism is through the Bible, the Hebrew government, and how they interpreted it, that starting in the Reformation. I looked at how, and going through the Reformation and looking at Thomas Hooker and John Leland, who both talk a lot about government. And then I also looked at how those ideas played into ideas of education and how George Washington, Samuel Adams, John Adams, Jefferson all believed that without an education founded on religion, Christianity specifically, freedom couldn't exist. That you had to have moral and ethical codes that, in Thomas Jefferson's words, were best found in Christianity, paraphrased, and that is how you could create a self-governing people. Now, this self-governing doesn't mean a nation that governs itself. It means a person who has self-control. And someone who has self-control and is looking out for the common good, the good of the community, doesn't need a strong government. It's only when we don't have those ethics and moral codes, and people think they can do anything they want to, that we need a strong government to step in and make laws to govern them. And so how I ended my paper, my final statement, was that without the freedom to read the Bible, the freedom enjoyed in Western cultures, and especially in America, would not have existed. As if you look at these authors and what they argued, you'll see that for them at least, it would have been impossible to have the Constitution and have what we consider freedoms without the ability to read the Bible and for each person to understand it on their own. Thank you for listening.